Hello and welcome to My Security TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with My Security Media, and this is our Friday morning episode. We're going to be joined by Chris Althaus, the Chief Executive Officer with the Australian Mobile Telecommunications Association, or AMTA, and we're going to be looking at 5G and why 5G matters. And this was a good sort of segue from our cover feature for the Cyber Risk Leaders magazine, our last issue, where that was literally our cover feature for why 5G matters. And Chris, on behalf of the association AMTA, really be looking at 5G safety and the benefits and the advantages of 5G and what differences it's going to really make for 2021 in the sector. So looking forward to speaking to Chris. We're going to bring over Chris Althaus, the Chief Executive Officer with the Australian Mobile Telecommunications Association, or AMTA. And Chris, just bringing you on now. Nice to meet you.
Hey, how you going? Good to see you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Now, this came from a media release, an approach from AMTA. And as I mentioned, it's the feature story of our magazine, our Cyber Risk Leaders magazine. Latest edition was 5G, Why It Matters. And that was really talking about in the context of all of technology, virtual reality, augmented reality. The list goes on in terms of what we are going to be seeing with 5G. And there was a bit of a safety slant from your approach as well. So maybe introduce AMTA. We've not met you before, and then we'll sort of dive into 5G and the key messages you want to get out to not just our audience, but to the general public as well.
Yeah, look, thanks very much, and it's great to be talking about this material. Obviously, AMTA is the industry association that represents the mobile sector. So we represent virtually mobile end to end. So the carriers, the infrastructure vendors, the device manufacturing sector, and related entities to the industry. So it's a fairly comprehensive representation of the sector. And of course, we've spent the last several years talking about 5G. And of course, the discussion initially began as it typically would, in terms of this is a generational progression. We've moved through 3G, 4G, and now it's 5G. We were talking about the various performance characteristics that 5G will bring that are new, and so on. And that was, the sector I represent is known for getting ahead of itself a bit. So we've been talking about 5G for a long time, and yet it was a long, it's only just, I think, regarded as mainstream in market. So. But the key point, I think, was that in 2020, obviously, COVID distracted everybody hugely. And that distraction also led to a fertile environment for misinformation to be propagated. And we saw this around the world. And of course, 5G wasn't immune to that misinformation campaign. And it surfaced and manifested in a number of different ways, but we're very concerned about that, and so part of our outreach to you was, some of those messages have been fairly poorly crafted and are basically just rank fake news, and we wanted to address those as well.
Well, what do you find? I mean, other than sort of the misinformation campaigns, where do you think the industry might have fallen down on? They focused on sort of the technology benefits, but forgot sort of this wave of concern we always seem to follow through with new technology. There's always a pushback or a fear factor, and it was kind of forgotten that maybe that's going to happen again with 5G, and maybe it was overplayed a little bit in terms of sort of the way that networks are running. Or is it potentially also that these new towers were coming into communities and with a lack of community consultation and awareness of those local communities as well? Where do you think it went wrong? Because maybe from our perspective, we're aware that the safety issues are pretty low, but it's really, where do you think the industry went wrong for future learning?
Look, I'm not sure we made too many mistakes. I guess we possibly were lulled into a slightly false sense of security with the 4G experience, because the safety-related issues through 3G, 4G, particularly 4G, were very low key. Hence, I think the relevance of the pandemic and that upswell in anxiety and worry. We're experiencing things we've never seen before, and we're worried. People are anxious, and so particularly in the social media space, which is sort of unfettered, we saw this rapid escalation of misinformation around 5G. At the crazy end, it was Bill Gates is going to provide a vaccine. We're going to get that vaccine, but in the vaccine will be some nanoparticle that will be ultimately controlled by 5G networks. So, don't get vaccinated. Don't hate 5G right from the get-go. Then it morphed into this more traditional sort of, it's new, we don't know enough about it, we haven't researched it enough, and therefore we should be pausing it, we should stop. And of course the bottom line here is that 5G is safe. And the progression to 5G is just another use of radio waves, just like 4G was, just like 2G was, like AM/FM radio, TV, all of those things. They're just uses of radio frequency. Now, if we made a boo-boo along the way, I think we didn't go early enough to the things that were different, and perhaps there was concern in the community, for example, that 5G frequencies would include millimetre waves. Now, no one knows what millimetre wave spectrum is out there in the general population, but they were hearing discussions of higher frequencies.
Yeah.
And of course, the very, very easy segue is higher frequencies means higher power. I'm not sure that I want higher power devices. And then someone said, there's going to be more base stations. I'm not sure whether I want that either. So this gathering of these linkages, and we probably waited too long to address that. Now, the reality is millimetre wave spectrum is actually, in many ways, lower power. It's great for carrying volumes of data, but it's lousy at going a long way. So we need more infrastructure to support it, but in terms of the human body, it's less impactful than perhaps most other frequencies we use across the board.
And it does sound like you've just been kiboshed by COVID-19, the timing of sort of the rollout, because I was hearing we're pretty much right on schedule in terms of the rollout, from what I was hearing sort of 3 years ago. And here we are, 2021, and as you say, it's mainstream and being rolled out across, particularly here in Australia, but elsewhere around the world. And then along comes a pandemic, and from a conspiracy theory perspective, that's a perfect link for the two. So yeah, as you say, the build-up may be reasonable not to have foreseen such an overreaction to it. So. Let's put the safety aside. I think the argument's been made, although there's still a discussion that the industry will need to be managing on the longer term. That's not going to go away for some. You just can't convince some people. But maybe we can still stay on to the benefits of 5G and how it's going to come. But I will say I've got 5G here in Sydney, and they seem to be doing a lot of maintenance on it. It's all over the place. Sometimes she's up there at 40, 50 megabits per second, then it gets up to 100, and then it's down to 1. So Optus and I are not good friends at the moment.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, just how's the rollout going here in Australia is a bit of an update, and then two, sort of the benefits that we will get.
Well, the rollout is rocking and rolling, literally. Yep. We were an early mover on 5G, so we started the get-go in 2019. A range of circumstances, not least of which was COVID, have slowed things a little bit. But really, all of the major network operators are deploying 5G pretty much as fast as they can go. really important moment coming up shortly is the auction of the 26 gigahertz millimetre wave spectrum, which will add to the suite of spectrum available to support 5G. But really, Australia's capacity in 5G and rollout activity in partnership with 4G. I mean, ultimately 5G will be a standalone, but right now it's very much in partnership with 4G, and we've got great 4G networks. So things are going quite well. There's always challenges, and it's new. I, like you, have the benefit of 5G where I'm located, and I've got a couple of colleagues in the cloud sector, and I send screenshots of my speed test and just to stir them up on a daily basis, because I've had a top out at 750 down. So that's really getting incredibly quick. And that's where the benefit story starts, doesn't it? I mean, we've just got an insatiable appetite for data. COVID proved it as we all went home. Data volumes have been rising anyway, but the pandemic shone a very bright light on our connectivity demand and data demand. That keeps moving. So 5G is going to do two really important things. One, it's going to enable capacity. Secondly, it's going to enable much lower latency, so speed. And then perhaps the third corollary of those two things is it's got this incredible ability to allow connections of billions of things. In your previous guest, you were talking about IoT. Well, the sensor world, the use of IoT, that explosion of data points, you're going to need the 5G network to support that. And one of the other sort of more technical parts of 5G, which is just completely brilliant and new, is this concept of network slicing. So you can partition your network and deliver one suite of characteristics to one customer and then a completely different suite. You could be an IoT researcher that wants a ping from a range of sensors once a month, or you could be someone designing an autonomous vehicle and you want basically 1 millisecond latency to ensure safety, etc. So all of these things are possible. They're possible at scale, and it is going to, for the consumer, it's going to be a speed capacity story, and the involvement of artificial intelligence, AR, VR, etc., is just going to make the entertainment opportunity just off the charts in terms of realism, etc. But once we step away from sort of perhaps the more mainstream consumer uses, and that includes obviously your smart home, your smart city, your smart car, etc., we really see 5G as the bedrock for the industrial internet. And this is where the big change comes, because this technology starts to invade the manufacturing sector, the agricultural sector, health, transport, logistics. Every part of the economy is going to be impacted by 5G as applications and services are designed for specific end users. That might be how you best grow blueberries at one end, or where your cows are at another, or where your trucks are, or how your pacemaker's working. It really goes across the board. So this connected society, network society, is going to be fundamentally supported by 5G, because one of the key characteristics across the board in all of what we're talking about is mobility, and the ability to get signals to and fro at speed, at capacity, in virtually every aspect of how we live and work.
We talked about just previously IoT security, and it was raised in terms of the benefits security at the network layer can have. And one of the sort of the applications we talked about, sort of the Internet of Things, is the sort of the behavioural analytics applications to understand what the device is and should be doing and the like. Is there anything at 5G that you've seen that can apply, apart from that behavioural analytics of the device, at the actual network layer? Is there enhanced security of the network and how that might be operating?
Look, there is, and I'm not privy to the detail particularly, but the nexus between privacy and security is paramount. across all networks, regardless of generation, and that includes 5G. And it perhaps goes up a notch with 5G because we are starting to talk about connectivity that is pervasive throughout industries and throughout infrastructure. So when we're starting to talk about the control of our cities and our infrastructure and our homes, cars, etc., 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 never has that security, privacy nexus, and the ability to manage that been more important. One of the things, without the technology of network security is way beyond my knowledge base. But one of the things that 5G is going to bring, which is incredibly important, is when we've looked at the amount of bandwidth that typically has had to have been allocated to that security environment. It's been a tough aspect of previous generations. I think the emergence of the capacity and bandwidth within 5G is going to make that security task easier in a sense, because you've got a lot more capacity to work with. And I think you'll find it's a never-ending vigilance that network operators apply to their new technologies. But I guess the short story is, when you're looking at a 5G network, you've got that much more capacity to play with and respond and manage, etc. And you're going to need it, because it is going across all platforms and into areas where we've never been.
Well, as I mentioned, the impacts from 5G on everything from sort of the processing power, the way devices operate, we're seeing that perfect storm. And a lot of what we're seeing in the devices and the processing power and the data that we're using, that 5G overlays it. Without that 5G, we'd be having all these powerful standalone systems and devices. The 5G now brings us up to that connectivity level that can handle that level of data that we're generating at the device level and at the endpoint. So I think that's kind of the key answer that we've learned, is that's why 5G matters this time around, is our devices are generating so much more data, so much more powerful, and it's also being brought together at that network layer now that 5G can handle it and give us that mobility, as you mentioned. What would be a percentage of the rollout here in Australia, and then how are we sort of related back to sort of Asia Pacific, and how are we sort of comparing to the region?
Look, we're comparing incredibly well. All network operators here are deploying hard. Most major metropolitan areas have got good and improving coverage every day. Operators are getting out into the major regional centres, and the technology itself is lending itself to solutions in areas. I think one of the things that's probably notable is that it's happening at speed. It's a rollout and a delivery and a changing environment that's perhaps happening faster than any generation prior to. And of course, Australia is a global leader here. We're tiny in terms of scale, but we are right up at the front end in terms of network quality and 5G development. If you look at the mobile connectivity index that the GSMA runs, Australia's ranked #1 for the last 5 or 6 years globally, and that's up with South Korea, Japan, China, the nations that are typically and the Scandinavian nations. So we're right up at the top. And I think we'll stay there because we're insatiable users of mobile. We've got 35 odd million subscriptions in this market for 25 million people, and the data volumes that you've mentioned earlier are strong and growing as applications and services diversify. So we're in a great spot, and we're of course looking at the key metrics now, and this goes back to COVID to an extent. Governments around the world are all looking at productivity as a key element, and this is where 5G, some people call it a system of systems, but it is going to be the platform, if you like, that is going to give rise to huge productivity opportunities, particularly in Industry 4.0 agendas, Fourth Industrial Revolution, where we're going to look for maximum productivity gain in all sectors, manufacturing, health, wherever. And that's where it's going to be critical.
Yeah, and look, and conscious of time, I think to finish off is, do you think, despite the issues COVID-19 has brought, but with the rollout of 5G, it will cement the hybrid remote workforce that we've seen? You know, it's kicked everybody out of the offices, out of the CBDs, and people have gotten used to it. It's gone long enough for people to get used to and adapt to remote work and working from home. And then with 5G, they've not had any connectivity issues. The networks are getting better in the period of time of COVID. Do you think that's going to cement it in over the longer period of time for a remote workforce?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we've, you know, it's tragic that we've had a pandemic to put this into play to this extent, but I think we will see the work from home environment persist. It's going to be also one of those things that's going to shine a very bright light on the key mobility factor. We often get asked about how does 5G sit then with the NBN, and we always say, look, it's complementary, that 5G will create competitive tension, no doubt, but these technologies sit side by side given the volume of data that has got to move. But it will be the cementing of that network society, the work from home agenda, and of course it doesn't stop here. We will, you know, people say, are you talking about 6G yet? And I say, well, absolutely we are. Yeah. Crazy as that sounds, because we're still in the early stages of 5G, but this is an evolution, and the capacity for data use, the role of AI, the role of networks and data analytics, and as your pet subject of security and privacy is embedded in there, this is all part of the way we're going to live more and more. And we're going to rely on this technology, and you know, it's got huge upside.
Yep. The human transformation is part of the process. Sorry, you raised 6G, and I was going to stay away from it, but you raised it. The time frame for 6G is 2030 or thereabouts?
Look, things move quickly. We used to always say that generations were around about a decade in length, but that dynamic is changing just sheerly because of the amount of resources that are being put into this technological wave. So, yeah, look, 2030 is probably a reasonable take right now, but there'll be a lot of discussion, and it's, you know, it's all about where the smarts are in the network, and of course different technologies coming in. So we're talking about millimeter wave, but you know, terahertz will be in play in a 6G environment now. Networks will become smarter. The analytics that go with those networks and how they relate to devices will also become more intelligent. So it's, you know, it's a pathway we're on, incredibly exciting. But I guess we ground ourselves in saying, well, good old 4G and 3G, you know, we're only starting to think about turning 3G off. So these generations coexist for long periods of time. Yeah. We'll see that continue, but you know, I think if there was a step change, if there was a quantum leap in our progression, it is the step from 4 to 5, and it will be the next major uplift, and then we'll start to see what happens from there. So, you know, arguably we're in the most exciting moment right now as we start to plumb the depths of 5G and what it can do for us.
Beautiful way to finish, Chris, and we're seeing this on all of our discussions. Ironically, you know, we have a lot of space discussions as well, and what's happening in space and low Earth orbit with satellites, and that's bringing additional connectivity over the top of that as well, and also with high performance computing and the like. So it really is a fascinating period of time, and if you've summarised it very nicely there from that 5G networks aspect as well. So I do appreciate having the Australian Mobile Telecommunications Association on. How many members have you got total?
We've got 30 or 40, so not a huge number, but of course, you know, it's a tremendously pervasive industry, but small in number because of the obvious capex requirements in order to play the game. But yeah, no, we're and look, it's a part of the Australian industrial scene now, which is, you know, I often describe it as there's never been a more successful marriage in technological terms. When we married the mobile phone with the internet, created the smartphone, we'll never look back from that.
Very nice. And you're obviously very passionate. You've been the CEO since 2005 in my notes, so very well done. Keep up the good work. And hopefully we'll have you back, you know, with any 5G developments and, as you mentioned, the 26 gigahertz?
26 gig auction, yes, in the coming days.
Beautiful. Okay, well, watch out for those news. Chris Althaus, the CEO for the Australian Mobile Telecommunications Association, or AMTA, thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks, Chris. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.